and conduction if you don't have a mass. Now, whenever there is a mass, what happens if, especially when it is a flowing mass, what happens? First you have to understand what exactly is the flow rate, what exactly is the mass transfer associated with that process before really the energy gradient that establishes. Okay. So if there is no mass, there is no convection, there is no conduction. So that's the reason why we were thinking about, why we were really discussing about what will be the flow, what will be the different flow patterns. And in those flow patterns, how exactly, what will be the laminar, what will be the transition, what will be the turbulent. And, if these are the situations, then what will be the flow pattern? How will the boundary layer look like? And from there, now we are going to graduate to that. If a boundary layer is established around a boundary, then how is the heat transfer is going to take place? So we are slowly coming back to the question that, say, suppose in this sort of situation, say, suppose you have in this sort of situation, suppose you have a plate, and on the plate, this is a heated plate, and then there is a flow that is taking place, which is a kind of free stream flow. Say this is suppose a cold fluid, and say suppose this is a hot plate. Now I have a situation like, first, how the hydrodynamic boundary layer settles. This particular boundary layer is associated with the flow. So when you have flow, you consider that boundary layer to be, what? That boundary layer to be the hydrodynamic boundary. Hydrodynamic or fluid dynamic boundary layer, flow dynamic boundary layer. Since most of the times we flow water, that's why this is called the hydrodynamic boundary layer, right? And then once this hydrodynamic boundary layer is established, then if you have the temperature heat transfer is taking place, then we will have the other boundary layer emerging, which is called the thermal boundary layer. Okay. By the way, these two are very different. The hydrodynamic boundary layer, the concept of hydrodynamic boundary layer, the architecture of hydrodynamic boundary layer is very different from the architecture of a thermal boundary layer, right? So today's lecture, the focus of today's lecture is to really see fundamentally how do we differentiate these two, and mathematically how do we model these two. So for a hydrodynamic boundary layer, what we are doing, say we are assuming this to be a laminar flow, and in the last class, what we have done, we have already seen that if rho is the density, and if you consider that, say suppose a unit cross section in the direction perpendicular to the plane of the 1 minute. Huh? Yes. So the mass entering, say suppose if I consider a differential volume element like dx and dy, dx is in the x direction, dy is in the y direction, right? So there is a left face, there is a right face, there is a bottom face, there is a top face. And then if I consider the plane perpendicular to the direction of this particular box is unit, then if rho is the density, u is the velocity, x directional velocity dy, and from there rho u dy into 1 gives you the mass flow rate that is coming through this. Now, if you do a Taylor series expansion, you get what? You get the mass that is going out. So u del x dx, this is what you are doing, the Taylor series expansion with respect to this dx. Similarly, with v, this is coming rho v dx, and this is going out v plus del v del y dy, okay, into dx. So you can see that from inlet 1, you have this mass come in from outlet 1, outlet 2, this is the amount of mass that has gone out. And if you just, simplify this, you get simply the continuity equation. So using a differential volume element with a laminar flow approximation, laminar boundary layer approximation, you get this equation very easily going for your, this also can be derived in this manner. We previously derived using the Reynolds transfer theorem, right? Now the same is applicable for the momentum. You just need to multiply with U all the equations, and then we know that we have to enforce rate of change of momentum will be equal to what? Will be equal to the forces. So essentially again you take a kind of a box, right? And then dx and dy. Okay, so U is the inlet, left inlet, and this is again same way U del U del x dx, that is right. This U is coming in the x direction. This is going out in the x direction. Then again, you have for V the same thing. V is coming in and V is going out here. So these are the total momentum and mass changes that you can consider. And then you have the pressure. So in this case, you have P into dy. And then here it is P plus del P by del X into dx into dy. So this is the pressure, change of pressure across the faces. And then these two faces, you take care of what? You take care of the change in the viscous forces, right? So if you add all of them together for a kind of net momentum balance, so you end up getting a kind of the Ocean's equation, okay, which is basically the steady state Navier-Stokes equation. So again, in the boundary layer, if you just enforce a momentum balance and then you enforce Newton's law of motion, you end up getting this equation. Now comes the trick. Now, this is these next two slides are the most important slides of heat transfer. If you understand next two slides, you understand heat transfer, boundary layer, laminar turbulent boundary layer in a huge way. Okay. So what is that? This is where I need your attention in a big way, because this is the master, the genius of Prandtl, which came in where we could really started analyzing the friction forces. Just to give you the background, previously, say suppose late 1400, 1500, 1600, these are the times when Newton has started working. At that point of time, people actually knew about this rate of change of momentum and their correlation with the mass into acceleration. So people were really working on different types of engineering devices. But the concept that was missing was the concept of friction, right? And you may understand that why this concept of friction is very, very important, because this is directly associated with your loss. There are two very important aspects with the friction. Number one is, without friction, you cannot really generate these phenomena like drag. Right. So suppose a ball is swinging. Yesterday we discussed. This phenomena you cannot really generate without friction. So friction is the reason why the phenomena is happening. Number one. Number two is that now this friction also is associated with your loss. So you cannot avoid this particular parameter because the phenomena is dependent on the parameter. If you want to have an aircraft that is flying, you need friction, you need to model friction, but then you really need to optimize it. If too much friction is there, then it is leading to too much of loss. So it's a very, very important parameter which you need to optimize. And before Newton's law of viscosity, this particular part was missing. And most of the flows that people used to model using what? Using the Euler's equation. What is the Euler's equation? So Euler's equation we used to write that rho dV by dt is equal to what? Minus gradient of P plus rho G. Okay. Now later on, when the Newton's law of viscosity was discovered, and this term was added, right? This is coming from the, say, suppose Newton's law of viscosity, right? For Newtonian fluids, right? Now, this part was missing and people used to model all fluid as the inviscid fluid. That means viscosity is zero because they did not have the understanding of the viscosity. So most of the development of engineering principles before Newton that took place, using this Euler's equation. This particular equation is called the Euler's equation, which doesn't consider the viscosity component. While Newton's genius only could identify the importance of viscosity, although in the Newtonian domain, later on you saw that the development of the non-Newtonian also took place there. Correct. So now you see that now we have to really learn that how exactly viscosity is influencing, because the flat plate is coming, because the flow is taking place, and the flow is encountering this flat plate where it is undergoing a friction. And from there, how exactly this laminar flow is coming up, this parabolic profile is coming up, how the boundary layer is emerging. This is where the physics, this is where the dynamics that one need to understand very clearly. And there, the breakthrough calculation was done by Ludwig Prandtl. He's a German scientist, German technologist, who could really give the first, analysis of this. What should be the thickness of the boundary layer? What should be the profile of the boundary layer? Now, moment you know the thickness of the profile, you know what will be the stress, you know what will be the forces, you know what will be the losses. Everything was very easy to calculate, at least to evaluate. So from there, you can calculate the losses, and you can also calculate the strength of these forces in order to really do engineering calculation. So we are going to attempt first the hydrodynamic boundary layer today, and then we are going to attempt the thermal boundary layer, right? So how do we go about the hydrodynamic boundary layer? We say that there is a controlled area, 1, 2, A and A. So 1A, A2, or 2A, A1. So this is your area. In that, 1 and 2 is dx. Okay, whereas we assume a boundary layer inside that, which is a developing boundary layer. Okay, we assume a boundary layer inside that, which is a developing boundary layer, and in that boundary layer we assume a kind of differential element, which is dy. Right? This square box, this rectangular box, this h we assume to be the total thickness, whereas the thickness of the boundary layer we assume to be the delta. Okay. Now, say suppose through plane 1. Okay, this is the plane 1, which is 1A plane. What is the mass coming in? We just saw that rho u dy is the mass coming in, and what you do, we integration between 0 to h. Okay, so now what is the mass that is going out through this plane? And now you remember that when I'm considering 1A, I'm considering a part of the free stream and a part of the boundary. When I'm considering plane 2, I'm considering a part of the free stream and a part of the boundary. Later on, you will see I will restrict the whole thing back to the boundary layer. Okay, so first, what is the plane? What is the mass coming through the plane? Is this? What is the mass that is flowing out of plane 2? Is nothing but I do a Taylor series expansion and I go for the one that is in the plane 2. Now, if I multiply this with u and u, I get the momentum. So these 4 gives me what is the mass that is coming through this plane, and what is the mass that is going out through this plane, and what is the momentum that is coming through this plane, and what is the momentum that is going out through this plane. So all the 4 expressions are very much straightforward for me, and it is there. Now, say suppose I know this much mass has come in and this much mass has gone out, right? So what is the net mass that has come in is this, correct? Now, if this is the net mass that has come in, and if my free stream velocity is u infinity, so the mass flow carries with a momentum in the x direction will be what? This into the u infinity, which you can see this parameter, correct? Now, from momentum, normally 0 to h balance, what we got, this is the momentum, right? Now, this part is actually added. This part has come in, but this part is actually have gone through. This is the change in the momentum in this particular area. So the net momentum flow out. Now, why am I calculating the net momentum? What am I assuming? That there should be a u infinity flow. There is no plate. What is going to happen? That is one situation. And second situation is, since there is a boundary layer, so there is a loss of momentum associated with the friction, and that is the reason why there is a net momentum. So One part is the total momentum that is possible, and the other part is that, if I have a free stream, so that gives me the net momentum. And you understand that this net momentum flow out of the control volume actually possesses the information of the boundary layer. This is where the genius of Prandtl that came in. So what is that? This is the mass flow rate, and I multiplied. This is the mass flow rate 0 to h, total mass that is flowing 0 to h, and I multiplied with u infinity, right, to give me what will be the total mass flow rate that is possible. It would have gone the full thing. If there was no plate, this is the total amount of momentum that would have changed in this control volume. But since the plate is there, a part has been lost due to the friction, and that is the reason. So the loss is associated with the difference between these two actually tells you what? Actually tells you what is there, what did you lose in the boundary layer. Right? Now in that,
infinity. Sir,
yeah.
What is U infinity?
U infinity is your free stream velocity. See, assume that there was no flat plate, okay? Say suppose you are blowing air, that is your free stream velocity. Now when you bring in a plate, what happens? The free stream velocity remains u infinity, but near the plate, what happens? Your velocity start reducing to 0, that is on the plate. So it is increasing from 0 to u infinity on the plate. Okay, whereas the free stream velocity remains to be u infinity there itself. Is it clear?
Yes, sir. Sir, in second expression, the second term is for momentum flow out, right now?
This one?
No, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
This one?
Yes, sir.
So what I see, so if I am not really focusing on free stream, I'm just focusing on this particular place, right? Now, yes, through this particular plane, what is the momentum that has coming in from 0 to h? If I integrate, it is rho u square dy, right?
Yes, sir.
Now what has gone out? I just have taken a Taylor series. So this is through this that has gone out. Correct?
Sir, but inside the system, there will be momentum loss now.
Yes, that's what I'm calculating. I am just first for the time being, I'm assuming u to be the local velocity. I do not know what is the profile for you, right? Right now, there is a parabolic profile, right? But when people invented, you did not know what is the profile, correct? So this is basically a black box for me. Just forget about this part, right? So in that situation, what I will do, I will assume that there is a u velocity and there is a mass flow rate that is rho u dy. So this is the momentum that has come in, and this is the momentum that has gone out.
Second term must be negative now.
Why negative? Because you are adding momentum. No, when you are going down, when you are going towards this, say suppose if the mass has increased, what is your momentum, right? Say more, as you are here, say suppose if you look at this particular point, initially it was 0.
Yes, sir.
So suppose if this was m initially, after some point of time, this will also become m.
Yes, sir.
So essentially the mass is flowing, right? And the momentum is also flowing, right? So from left to right, it can be plus minus, don't worry about that. But there is a change that you appreciate, right?
Yes, sir.
Now that change, this is the change in the, if this is the change in the mass, so this is the change in the momentum. Where yes, I do not know what is u. I'm going to get what is u. Right now I do not know u. U can be changing in 0 to h. But I just say that if u is the local velocity, the variation is 0 to h. So that is the net change in the momentum. Clear?
Yeah.
Now I say that if this was the mass that has gone in, if this was the mass that has changed in this control volume, correct? And if it was free stream velocity u infinity, that was the initial, before the plate was inserted, u infinity was the velocity, correct?
Yes,
so
sir.
You were supposed to have this momentum.
Yes,
but
sir.
Since you have inserted the plate, this is the change in the momentum, correct?
Yes.
Now the difference between these two actually is going to give you what is the loss associated with the boundary layer. This is the momentum loss associated with the boundary layer. This is the frictional loss associated with the boundary layer.
Yes,
Am I
sir.
correct? Right.
Yes, sir.
Now you will see we are going to do the same. So now what we are doing? So now once we have set up this equation, then we use this identity d of n phi equal to nt phi phi dn. A very standard, rule that is applied. So what we write, u infinity d dx of this, we write in terms of what? Say d dx of u infinity 0 to h rho u dy. Now, if I expand this, you will find it will be addition of this and that. So we just rearrange this in terms of this u infinity, and we write this particular equation rearrange. This is equal to this u infinity d dx of 0h rho u dy dx. We write as d dx of 0 to h rho u infinity dy dx, and du infinity dx equal to 0 to h rho u dy. Just I'm rearranging using this particular formula, right? And this is where the definition of the boundary layer will come. You will see later as I go to the next slide. Now I have taken into account this part and that part, the mass and the momentum. Okay. Now I take care of, first I take care of this 1-2 plane. Okay. In that 1-2 plane, what is the shear stress that I have from Newton's law? Tau W is what? Mu into du dx. So tau W into dx. So this is essentially the force that I have, that is equal to mu into dx into du dy at y equal to 0. So this is my on this particular plane. On this particular plane, this is what is my wall shear stress, right? And then in addition, what I have apart from wall shear stress, why the flow is taking place? Because there is a pressure gradient del P by del X. That is what is forcing the flow. So this is the wall shear stress. This is dP by dx into H. This is the total pressure gradient. Now this total force is what? This total force is equal to the rate of change of momentum. This rate of change of momentum is nothing but I am bringing it from here, this equation, and plugging it back here. Right? So this is my Newton's second law for the boundary layer. Right? So this is the force and this is the mass into acceleration that is associated with the boundary layer. Right? Now in that, Prandtl made a very, very smart assumption, although this will not be true for any viscous flow. But what he said that, this delta P by L dP by dx across a boundary layer, he said that, since this boundary layer is a very small area, and since the pressure drop that I'm applying through, say, suppose I have a pipe and I'm just maintaining P1 and P2 with the help of a pump, right? I can make sure that use the pump, this del P by del X to remain to be constant. Now, moment you put del P by del X constant for an invasive flow using Bernoulli, you can get also, like that this is Bernoulli's equation, differential form, right? So dP by rho will be equal to minus V of dV. That can be written as dP by dx equal to minus rho infinity. So if you enforce dP by dx to be 0, you can write minus rho u infinity du infinity by dx. So these two become 0. Now du infinity dx 0, dP by dx 0. Now if you drop these two terms, then you get a very simple equation for boundary layer, which consists of this, and that is to be written as rho ddx of 0 to du infinity minus u dy equal to tau w equal to mu into del u del I at y equal to 0. And this is what is called the famous boundary layer equation, right? It's an integral boundary layer equation. If you analytically solve this equation, you are going to get what? The solution of this equation. Now you see that, from here, what you did, 0 to h, this limit, you have pressed this 0 to h limit to 0 to delta. These are all from the physical framework that you are assuming that, say now you say that this is 0 to delta, and across this point to this point, the del P by del X remains to be the uniform. And then, you are doing the entire analysis with this dy and this with this dx. And that, gives you a kind of approximate equation for the boundary layer, which comes out to be like this. Now, if you get an analytical solution for a boundary layer, you get delta by x equal to 5 by Reynolds number to the power half. What is delta? Delta is the thickness. What is x? X is the length, from the leading edge to this. What is Reynolds number? Reynolds number is the flow rate. Correct? This is an analytical solution in Hallman Appendix B. You may see the derivation that is given, right? But then this was not what Prandtl attempted. What Prandtl did, Prandtl said this, that if you have a boundary layer, what you do, you assume for the boundary conditions for a given boundary layer. What are the boundary conditions? Say at y equal to 0, I can assume u equal to 0. There is no x directional velocity. Whereas at y equal to delta, I can assume u equal to u infinity. Now, at y equal to delta, I can also assume that del u by del y equal to 0 because this velocity profile is flattening here. And since this is a constant pressure condition, you can, from momentum equation, you can see that del p by del x will be equal to mu into del square u by del y square. But since del p by del x is equal to 0, you can write del square u by del y square equal to 0. That will be equal to y equal to 0. So if I enforce these four boundary condition, and then what I do, I assume that this is a polynomial. I don't know whether it's a parabolic, hyperbolic, any type of power law series. I do not know what is the profile. What I do, I assume a very random cubic polynomial, and all this C1, C2, C3, C4, I want to evaluate from this boundary condition. If I evaluate from this boundary condition, enforce this for C1, C2, C3, C4, what am I going to get? Is the velocity profile, that is u by u infinity, is 3 by 2 y by delta minus half of y by delta whole cube. So with this smart assumption, what he did, he could get first the velocity profile, the first analytical expression for the velocity profile associated with the boundary layer, right? Assuming a profile, enforcing four smart boundary conditions in the momentum equation, immediately you have the profile. Now what he did, in this equation, he plugged back this u. Here he plugged back this u that he derived into this equation. In all the u's, he has plugged back in. And then once he simplified this equation, he obtained what? Delta by x equal to 4.64 by Reynolds number to the power half. Right? Here, what was the analytical? Later on, when we did lot of mathematics and all, the analytical solution, what we got, it is 5 by Reynolds number to the power half. Right? And here, what did we get? So essentially, the conclusion that we had obtained is what? We have obtained what? See, if I have a boundary layer that is developing, okay, and if x is the length at which, this is the downstream. So say suppose, if you put a kind of, x-axis and y-axis, say suppose this is 0 and suppose this is x, right? So delta by x, what am I observing is something like 1 by root over of RE, which is something remarkable. So what is the thickness of your boundary layer? What is the thickness of your boundary layer? You just need to know what is the length at which it has traversed on the surface, and then you just need to know what is the Reynolds number to the power half. So as the Reynolds number increases, what will happen to delta? Can anybody tell me if the Reynolds number increases, what will happen to the delta? What will happen to the delta if the Reynolds number
decrease? X constant, then it will decrease.
Decrease, right? Now you see that, say when Reynolds number is small, you may see that when the Reynolds number is small, you had something like this, right? The delta was extending up to the middle of the pipe. Then, you had a turbulent flow. There you saw that when the Reynolds number is increasing, what is happening? The boundary layer is so straight away with some very simple calculation. Although this is not very accurate, but with very smart assumptions, you could really arrive at that thickness of the boundary layer. It is not only the transition from laminar to turbulent is a function of, it can be indicated by Reynolds number. Even the thickness of the boundary layer can also be indicated by, if you know what is the Reynolds number, you can really estimate what can be the thickness of the boundary layer. Why is it so important? Because this is the thickness where I am incurring the losses, the frictional losses. If I get delta, I get everything. If I have delta, I have velocity. If I have velocity, I have the stresses. If I have the stresses, I am able to calculate the forces. If I am able to calculate the forces, I am able to calculate what are the losses, what are the viscous forces, what are the losses associated with the whole process. However, this delta is what? This delta is associated with what? This is the thickness of the hydrodynamic boundary layer. This is only the flow. We really did not take into account the temperature here. This is only the flow. Fluid is coming on the flat surface, then it is developing, and that developing flow is coming out. I have done a lot of mathematics here, but at the end of the day, what is the end of the story? End of the story is that, you know, any delta, any boundary layer that is developing near the surface, right, which will be function of 1 by root RE, and more accurately 5 by RE to the power half. So what is the next conclusion? X. So you can also write this boundary layer equation as what? Delta is equal to what? Delta is proportional to what? X by RE to the power half, right? So first is, as X increases, thickness of the boundary layer increases. And second is, as Reynolds number increases, the thickness of the boundary layer reduces. So two very interesting physical interpretations that you get, you know, from this analysis. Any questions here up to this point? Any questions?
Sir,
Yeah.
in the previous slide, so can you go to the previous slide? So the total force is, so why the total force is not equal to the net momentum?
That's what net. This is the net momentum. Now this is the momentum that you see. This is at the wall, right? So I'm just assuming this particular part, correct? So this is not the total force. This is at the wall. So on the wall, how much is the? See, what I'm trying to find out, what is the origin of this boundary layer? Why did it first originate? First, I made sure that there is a flow, and then on the wall, I did incur some losses. Am I correct? So I just encountered those two parts. What is the wall shear stress and what is the force that I am applied to make the flow happen? Now these two are the reason for the difference in the momentum that I got. If there was a free stream, I would have got something like that. And since it is not free stream, since there is a boundary layer there, I have this momentum. So the difference between these two has to be like, you know, with the wall shear stress and the pressure, the difference between these two, that has to be the difference between this. Am I clear?
Okay, sir. Yes.
Understood. I'm not taking in the total force here. I'm just, you know, working on the different phases of this particular geometry to see what are the components that are impacting this boundary layer formation. That is being considered here. Clear?
Hello, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, I want to ask that in the relation we see delta by x equal to 5 by RE to the power half. So here we can see that if we take x extremely large, the effects of the Reynolds number will not be that significant. So, sir, is there any application in real life for this information?
Yeah. So you can very immediately see, right? This boundary layer will saturate at some point of time, right? Thickness of the boundary layer will saturate at some point. It will not keep on increasing, right?
Yes, sir.
So that is where, like, you know, say as you go downstream, even if you keep changing the Reynolds number, it will saturate to a value. Am I correct? So that is also reflected here. So a boundary layer, when I'm drawing the boundary layers, how are we drawing the boundary layers? We are drawing the boundary layers like, say, suppose it is like this, and then we are drawing it like this, and then it is saturating, right?
Yes, sir.
This is your delta, right? Now here, this delta is the variable delta. So you are talking about this is to be x. After some point of time, this thickness is Reynolds number independent, right?
Yes, sir.
So that is also reflected with such simple calculation. You see, right now you can solve these things numerically and at the same time analytically. But then you will see that, you know, these are very accurate calculations, and most of the engineering devices are made out of these calculations. The huge literature is there.
It's
okay,
cool.
Clear?
Yes.
Any other question? Great. So once we understood this up to this point, now, you know, it's a bit complicated, but again, you know, keep your cool. It's again easy. You will see, I'll just be adding the temperature part here. Now, there is a fluid flow. But in the fluid flow, we are assuming that there is a convection, there is a convection. The geometry remains to be the same. Boundary layer develops. Of course, I will have a thermal boundary layer later that I put a word of caution to you. We'll come up to that. But then there is a free stream velocity u infinity. Okay, and dy dx is a control volume element. And what I assume that dt by dy is much larger than dt by dx. The temperature gradient is not in the horizontal direction. Temperature gradient, heat is flowing in this direction. Heat is not flowing in that direction. So what are the different components I really need to worry? Energy convected in the left phase. With flow, what is the energy coming in? Energy convected in the bottom phase. With flow, what is coming in? Energy convected out of the right phase. With flow, what is going out? Energy convected out of the top phase. So 4 components are there for the convection. But for conduction, what am I doing? I'm not doing in the horizontal direction. Heat conducted from the bottom phase and heat conducted out of the top phase, just to keep it simple. And then I have a heat component associated with friction also. So net viscous work done on the element, right? So this is my energy balance. This is my energy balance altogether. Now, what is the convected that is coming in here? So if u is the velocity, so rho Cp, now I have to I know rho u dy is my mass, right? Rho u dy into 1 is my mass, right? Mass per unit volume, right? Mass, right? Now with that, if I multiply mCpt, so that will be my heat that is coming in this particular surface. Now u is graduating to u plus del u del x dx. This is the hydrodynamic part. And T is graduating into what? T plus delta T by delta x dx. This plus is immaterial. It can be minus also based on if it is cooling or heating. This plus is also immaterial. It can be minus also based on whether the momentum is increasing or reducing. So don't worry about these signs because there are gradients, that will decide the sign. Right? So this is the convective in, this is the convective out in the X plane. This is the convective in and this is the convective out in the Y plane. This is the conduction that is at the Y and this is the conduction out at the Y plane. And this much is the viscous work. We know that mu into du by dy into dx, right? Mu into du by dy is your tau. Tau into dx into 1 is your force. And force into displacement is the work done. That gives you this mu into del u by del y whole square dx dy. So this is the total energy, the work done by the viscous force. Now, if you accumulate all this together and do a kind of differential volume analysis, you get what? This is your equation for, so u dt by dx, v dt by dy, this is your convective component of the energy balance. Alpha d square t by dy square, this is your conduction, and this is the viscous work, and this is your continuity equation. So energy equation has been established in dx dy inside the boundary layer, for a system which is undergoing convection plus conduction. So this we already derived, right? Previously, when we were, doing the energy balance, maybe in the first few lectures, we really derived this equation. We were handling up to this point, right? We did not really worry about this part and this part, but then this is the convected part. This is the diffusion or conduction part. And this is the viscous part, which is coming as a, that, if there is a friction, there will be energy, and that energy is coming as this. Right? Great. Now thermal boundary layer. So what is thermal boundary layer? Now you see that I am saying that delta T. So hydrodynamic boundary layer is delta. But then, I also am worried about, like, there can be a boundary layer which is delta T, which is the thermal boundary layer. Right? Now you tell me whether the hydrodynamic boundary layer will form first or the thermal boundary layer will form first. What is the situation? Anybody has any idea? So suppose, I have a flow, I have a hot plate here, right? And then I am flowing a cold fluid on top of this. So this is a hot plate, and I'm flowing a kind of cold fluid on top of this. So what will be the mechanism of the formation of the hydrodynamic boundary layer and the thermal boundary layer? Anybody has any idea? Jaldi se batao. Any idea when the hydrodynamic boundary layer will form, when the thermal boundary layer will form? How will you expect that to happen? Yes. कुछ तो बताओ बाबा.
Sir, hydrodynamic boundary layer will form first.
Yes, very nice. So initially the hydrodynamic boundary layer will form because if there is no mass, there is no conduction or convection, correct? What will be the heat transfer if there is no mass around, right? And then you will see that once this hydrodynamic boundary layer forms, apart from the leading edge, if I just go a little bit of downstream from the part of the leading edge, your thermal boundary layer will form. And I tell you another part which you will read maybe in the mass transfer as you progress in your chemical engineering. So you have three transports, right? Momentum, heat, and mass, right? So heat transfer will happen, the thermal boundary layer will happen a little earlier. Mass transfer boundary layer will happen a little late. Right. So suppose you have a sugar surface, right? And you are flowing water. So sugar has to diffuse from this solid to the water, right? Now that also will have a boundary layer issue with the boundary layer. Mass transfer will have also issue with the boundary layer, which is called the mass boundary layer. So initially, until or unless the momentum boundary layer forms, the thermal boundary layer will not form. Since temperature flows much faster than any mass flow, thermal boundary layer will be starting at much faster level, whereas the mass boundary layer will form at the end. So this is another question that typically asked in the interviews. Just keep in your mind how exactly, the boundary layers, the hydrodynamic boundary layer, the thermal boundary layer, and the species boundary layer. These are their origin points are different from the leading edge. Okay, the X that you calculate that has a lag factor for the heat transfer, for the thermal boundary layer, and for the species boundary layer. Okay. Now for thermal boundary layer. Yeah, any question?
Yes, sir. Sir, these boundary layers will have similar properties, right? Like only the X direction, that is a point of origin, will be different. We can expect that.
Yeah, I just show you. This is the way it develops. Okay.
Okay.
If you just keep exploring later, you may find that they may asymptotically meet somewhere as they progress.
Okay,
so,
at some point of time, like they will become approximately the same.
So now say suppose for a convection, if you are, why this is calculated? Because for a convection, convective momentum transport, you have to integrate between this to this, correct? But for convective thermal transport, you have to integrate between this and this. If you integrate between this and that, you will be over predicting your calculations, overburdening your calculations. That's the reason delta T is also important to calculate using the thermal boundary layer. Okay, similarly, there will be mass boundary layer also, which is delta M. And these will be consequence of the hydrodynamic boundary layer. So convection, until or unless there is a movement of fluid, there will be no boundary layer. Until or unless there is no boundary layer, there is no thermal convection, there is no mass convection. And you have to make if you want to make an accurate calculation, you have to make the thermal convection with the help of this thermal boundary layer. If you want to really make calculations of mass boundary layer, you have to make using the thickness of the mass boundary layer. Clear? I'm coming to this. It will be much clearer.
Okay, sir.
Now, I suppose U equal to U infinity and Y equal to delta. I just, doing an order of magnitude analysis. So that I first calculate alpha. See, essentially, I'm doing a kind of order of magnitude analysis to knock off this term. You will find that this term is very, very significant. See, when these two are dominating factor, the viscous dissipation, somewhere saying that, dissipation somewhere. So this is your dissipation. Okay. Friction force, viscosity is something different. Dissipation is something different. Dissipation has to do, when you do friction, you generate, you generate some heat. You convert this work into heat, right? Now that heat is called the dissipation. So this particular term is called the viscous dissipation term, right? Now that term, if I just put an order of magnitude analysis, that maximum velocity in a boundary layer is u infinity and maximum thickness is delta. If I plug in these values with normal velocities and for water, for temperature and all, you will find that the value of this dissipation term is extremely small, right, as compared to the other terms. So you can simplify this equation into this. Now for momentum, we saw what was the equation. So this was the convective heat transfer. This is the conductive heat transfer. For momentum, this is the convection, and this is the friction, right? So you may see that these equations are, so when T is the temperature, U is the velocity, you may see there is a huge similarity between these. And for a thermal boundary layer, say at y equal to 0, what is this? T equal to T wall temperature. At y equal to delta T, what is that? Del T by del y equal to 0. At y equal to delta T, T equal to T infinity. At y equal to 0, d square T by dy square equal to 0. Basically, you are telling that, the heat conduction equation to be 0. Now, if you enforce these boundary conditions and if you assume a cubic polynomial, so you get theta, the temperature, which is T minus TW, T infinity minus TW, again fitted to what? A very similar equation like this, which is associated with what? Now, the only change you see that this is nothing but delta T, right? So you assume a solution, cubic polynomial, satisfy this equation, enforce this boundary condition, evaluate the constants, and you get the temperature profile like this, which is again a kind of parabolic profile. So energy convected in for plus viscous work, heat transfer at the wall equal to energy convected out. Okay. So how do we really put the thermal boundary layer equation combined with the hydrodynamic boundary layer equation, right? So what am I doing? I'm assuming a plate, and this is my hydrodynamic boundary layer. As the hydrodynamic boundary layer has established, because of U infinity, there is a T infinity associated with that. So slowly my thermal boundary layer is also developing. Again, my geometry remains to be 1A2. This is my dx. Okay. So energy, first, you know that what is the mass that has come in? You know those mass, momentum, all those things coming in. So energy convected through plane 1, rho u dy was my mass, and then I just multiplied with CPT integrated 0 to h. This is my net viscous work done based on the previous. What is energy convected out? I just took a Taylor series here on top of that, right? And what is the heat transfer to the wall? This I put a kind of conduction boundary condition, right? Now, if I join these all as we did in the previous, I get, this is my equation for the thermal boundary layer, which is very similar to the equation for the hydrodynamic boundary layer. Okay, so you can see that just following the same principle, I am able to establish the equation. So this is associated with viscous work. This is associated with the convection. And this is what is the wall heat transfer, and that is what is causing my delta T. Now here you will find U is there, T is there. So what should I do? I just take both the solutions. So this is the solution I got from T. This is the solution I got from U. One is associated with delta and one is associated with T. I enforce in this equation and then do some sort of mathematical juggleries with the boundary condition to obtain what? Zeta, which is delta T by delta, is equal to 1 by 1.026 Prandtl number, something like that. So you will always find, if you put the right values here for everything, you will always find zeta to be a fraction. Zeta to be what? Zeta to be less than 1. Zeta is always less than 1. So even if I am doing an analytical calculation based on the equations that I had, and from there, if I am enforcing into the boundary layer, what I will get? I'll get zeta is less than 1. That means is the thickness of the boundary layer, thermal boundary layer, will always be less than the thickness of the hydrodynamic boundary layer. There are some exceptions. I will show you those exceptions also. But up to this point, it is clear to all of you. I mean, you need not really memorize everything. It is just about understanding how things are happening. And I will just request you to do at least once the hand calculations, because there are a little bit of clumsy algebra associated with all these things that you should know, right? At least once in your life, you should be doing these things, in scribbling these things. Just you will generate a lot of respect for those who have invented this for the first time. Is it clear to all of you? Up to this point, any questions? Great. So now once we have understood this, so you could see that the ratio of this thermal and so as the hydrodynamic boundary layer is developing momentum diffusivity, then the thermal boundary layer is developing due to the thermal diffusivity. And at this onset point, you get which parameter? It is called the Prandtl number, which is what? Which is nothing but the ratio of the momentum to thermal diffusivity. So what is the physical significance of Prandtl number? Prandtl number actually tells you. Prandtl number actually tells you what? Prandtl number tells you what should be the thickness of the thermal boundary layer as compared to the thickness of the hydrodynamic boundary layer. Actually, magnitude of Prandtl number will decide what? The magnitude of Prandtl number will decide the thickness of the thermal boundary layer to the thickness of the hydrodynamic boundary layer. So it's all in boundary layer, it's all diffusive transport taking place. Momentum and heat transport all are diffusive transport. So Prandtl number is if you calculate Prandtl, if Prandtl number is 0.7, that means what? That means you can straight away see that if the Prandtl number is 0.7, so your thermal boundary layer is how much fraction of your hydrodynamic boundary layer that you will be able to calculate from here, right? So we now know one dimensionless number called Prandtl number that gives me the Q for the ratio of the thermal to hydrodynamic boundary layer. I know the Reynolds number, which gives me the Q of what? Which gives me the Q of like, whether it is a laminar or turbulent, right? What should be the thickness of the boundary layer? The third one, what I will introduce, is called the Nusselt number. What is this Nusselt number? Nusselt number is the measure of Hx by K. So this is basically ratio of the convection to conduction. Why this is important? Because when I am considering the entire convective and conductive transports, okay, when I'm considering entire transport process, I have a part in convection and part in conduction, right? Now, Nusselt number talks about how much is the convection to how much is the conduction. And these three dimensionless numbers are correlated as the Nusselt number is equal to Prandtl number to the power half and Reynolds number to the power Prandtl number to the power 1/3 and Reynolds number to the power half. So the convection to conduction is nothing but what is the ratio of the hydrodynamic to thermal boundary layer and what is the ratio of the inertia to the viscous force. This is one of the most famous equations which is used in order to really get a measure. You calculate Nusselt number, you will get, like, if it is more than 1, that means it's a strong in convection, weak in conduction. When you do Reynolds number, very high means it's turbulent, right? When you do Prandtl number, you get what is the extent of boundary layer that where, like, convective heat transport is taking place. So calculating these numbers, you will be able to really get, like, where exactly you are going to get what, right? And those are the things that are obtained. Say, suppose when the plate is heated over an entire length, delta by T zeta equal to this, and Prandtl number is equal to this, and then Nusselt number equal to this, then what you do, you calculate H in terms of what? This is conduction and this is your convection, right? So HA delta T equal to, so you equate these two, and from there, you get this. Now, these are all simple mathematical juggleries to get H. And from there, you do a little bit of rearrangement in order to get this. So essentially, you are extending this analysis in order to get a kind of a comprehensive equation associated with the Nusselt number, to Prandtl number, to Reynolds number. So earlier we had, like, for the lump system, we had a Biot number, which was very similar to Nusselt number, but that is a measure of what? That is the measure of the transients. Then we had Fourier number, right? And then now we have introduced 3 more dimensionless numbers, which are called the Nusselt number, Prandtl number, and Reynolds number. These are very, very important to really calculate the convective to convective heat transfer. Okay. Okay, so since it is 1, I stop here. Okay, this 34 to 44 we keep as a kind of, maybe in the after the midsem examination. Okay, this is out of the syllabus. So up to slide 33, I keep as the syllabus for your midsem examination. Okay, and then up to tutorial, up to the next tutorial that we'll be doing on 17th. Any question you have up to this point? Any question? Since you do not have questions, so let us meet on 17th on Friday, and we'll have a tutorial, and then we'll